Carol is hiding in an empty store. She's desperate to stay awake, so she's trying to find any medicine or energy drinks she can. There are dangerous things outside the store, banging on the door trying to get to her. It all started a few days ago when a space shuttle exploded on its way back to Earth. Pieces of the shuttle fell in many states across the USA. The news was all over it, saying it might be a sign of an alien invasion. Most people were too afraid to touch the pieces, but some folks tried to sell what they found on eBay. Tucker, the head of the Center for Disease Control, went to check out one of the crash sites. He found out that a piece of the shuttle had a strange thing on it that could survive lots of radiation. This thing could also multiply really fast, which meant it probably came from another planet. While Tucker was looking at the piece, he accidentally touched it and got a cut on his finger. He didn't think much of it and left. But later that night, when he went home, his dog growled at him for no reason and then ignored him. When Tucker went to bed, he started sweating a lot, and his face changed like something was taking over his body. Meanwhile, Tucker's ex-wife Carol heard their son Oliver screaming from a nightmare. She ran to his room, woke him up, and stayed with him the rest of the night. The next morning, Tucker called Carol and asked to see his son, which was strange because he hadn't done that in a long time. Carol said no and hung up. After that, she dropped Oliver off at school and went to her office, where she works as a psychiatrist. On the way there, she ran into her best friend Ben, who's a doctor. He offered to give her a ride and told her that the government was hiding something big. All the people who were studying the crash site had quit their jobs. Carol didn't want to talk about politics. She just complained about how Tucker was acting weird and how he suddenly wanted to see their son after being gone for 4 years. Carol arrives at her office and meets with her first patient, Wendy. Wendy tells Carol that her husband has been acting strangely. A few days ago, when he came home, their usually friendly dog growled at him for no reason. Her husband killed the dog without showing any emotion. Carol knows something is wrong, but only prescribes new medicine for Wendy. That evening, Carol and her neighbor take their children trick-or-treating. At one house, the family dog barks wildly at them. The owner says the dog is usually well-behaved. As they try to leave, the dog jumps on one of the boys and knocks him down. The boy doesn't seem upset. He squeezes the dog's mouth with his hands until the owner takes the dog away. The boy is hurt but shows no emotion. Later, at Carol's house, while the boys share candy, the neighbor tells Carol that her son has been acting oddly, like he has no emotions. Suddenly, Oliver screams from another room. Carol runs to him and finds a strange piece of flesh coming out of his hand from the candy. The next day, Carol sees a scared woman running in the street but ignores her. She takes the strange flesh to Ben, who gives it to his scientist friend Stephen to test. A mysterious virus spreads through the country, causing many deaths. No one knows why. An emergency meeting is held in the capital. Tucker says the virus is spreading very fast. If nothing is done, the country will have a recession. When asked about a solution, Tucker says the only way to stop the virus is with an inoculation program. Meanwhile, many infected waiters throw up into the tea they will serve to the guests. After leaving the hospital, Carol sees a homeless man having a seizure on the street. Unlike the scared woman, he is being helped. At her office, Carol is surprised to find Wendy's husband there. He won't leave until he sees his wife. He speaks without emotion. Carol calls Wendy to warn her and stops her from entering the building. Wendy takes a taxi to stay with her sister instead. Carol reluctantly lets Oliver spend time with Tucker that night. On the way to Tucker's house, a scared woman suddenly appears in the middle of the road. Carol hits the brakes just in time. The woman begs for help, saying something terrible will happen soon. Before she can explain more, a car runs her over. The driver shows no emotion during the horrible accident. When the police arrive, Carol wants to testify against him, but the head cop tells her to go home, saying they have it covered. Carol finds this odd. She drops Oliver at Tucker's place, noticing her ex doesn't show much emotion before she leaves. Carol meets Ben at a fancy party. They have a deep conversation with diplomat Beliste, his wife Ludmilla, and Dr. Jorsh. After the party, Ben takes Carol home and tries to kiss her. Carol breaks the kiss, not wanting to ruin their friendship. Inside, Carol messages Oliver and hears someone at the door. She opens it slightly and finds a man asking census questions, which seems strange at this hour. Carol tries to close the door, but the man puts his hand inside. They struggle until Carol wins and locks the door, making the man leave. Meanwhile, Oliver plays with his friend Jean, who says his father is acting weird. Oliver thinks the same about Tucker. At home, Oliver finds Tucker making him a special drink. The next morning, Carol sees many people on the streets with blank stares, as if their souls were taken. At her office, Carol is shocked that all her clients canceled their appointments. She calls Wendy, but her husband answers, saying everything is fine. Carol realizes the virus is controlling people. As she starts Googling information, her secretary startles her, offering tea. Before she can drink it, Ben calls, saying the test results of the strange skin patch are ready. Carol goes to the lab, where Stephen explains that the skin sample contains molecular spores that take over the human brain during sleep and change the genetic code, making a person unstable. To prevent the deadly infection, they must not sleep until they find a cure. Carol, Ben, and Stephen rush to Yorish's house after Ludmilla calls Ben, saying Yorish is acting strangely. On the way, Carol notices long lines of people waiting to get vaccinated against the new virus. At Yorish's, they find him in bed, his body going through a horrifying transformation. When Carol tries to take a picture, the monster like Yorish wakes up and attacks her. Ben pushes him away, and Yorish drags his body, vomits a strange liquid, and dies. Worried about Oliver's exposure, Carol hurries to Tucker's house. There, she finds Tucker in a meeting and asks about Oliver. Tucker says Oliver is playing at Jean's, but Carol doesn't believe him and searches the house. Tucker's associates surround Carol, scaring her. She tries to run, but Tucker tackles her and infects her with his saliva. Carol pushes him away and escapes through the back door. She asks the neighbors for help, but they're infected too. She reaches her car, only to find the road blocked, and crashes. Chased by infected people, Carol enters a subway station and boards a train full of emotionless passengers. Her phone rings with a message from Oliver, asking her to save him because Tucker has hidden him somewhere. This nearly breaks Carol, and a passenger reveals he isn't infected. He tells her everyone is acting emotionless to avoid the infected, and she should do the same. Infected people enter the wagon, so Carol and the sane passengers run to the end of the train and close the door. The infected ones stop the train and break down the door to infect the passengers. Carol opens the back door, jumps off, and runs through the tunnel to a station's locker room. She finds a guard's gun and accidentally shoots the approaching guard out of fear. Terrified, Carol drops the gun and crosses the station, pretending to be infected. On the street, she sees cops catching uninfected citizens to force them to take the vaccine, which is Tucker's trick to spread the virus. An uninfected cop notices Carol's sweat and tells her to leave quickly, as the sweat will give her away. Carol walks away and bumps into her neighbor, who offers her the shot. Carol's acting convinces the neighbor that she has already been vaccinated. She goes to Tucker's house but finds it empty. Leaving a message for Oliver, Carol goes to the Belizec mansion, where Ben and Stephen are conducting tests. They agree to stay awake in case they've been infected. Ben decides to help Carol find Oliver while Stephen and his assistant go to Fort Detrick in Maryland to find a cure. Belizec returns home, and Ludmilla hugs him, but Belizec is infected and worried about intruders. He lets guards inside, but Carol and the others see this on security cameras and escape through the back door. On the streets, they see infected cops forcefully taking Wendy away. She fights, yelling that she slept and is still okay, but the cops knock her out. Carol and Ben realize Wendy has developed immunity to the virus. They find a dead cop, steal his car, and go to Carol's office to search Wendy's medical profile. Ben discovers Wendy's brain illness, encephalitis, makes her immune because the virus only attacks healthy brains to feed and multiply. Ben calls Stephen with this information, while Carol gets a text from Oliver saying he's at his grandmother's home in Baltimore. Carol confesses to Ben that she's been infected, but he promises everything will be all right. Ben drives to the city, crossing blocked roads until he has to let Carol go so the police will chase him instead. Carol continues on foot, shows her ID to a cop with a poker face, and boards the train to Baltimore, hiding in the bathroom. Lack of sleep takes its toll, and Carol has visions of a second self in the mirror trying to attack her. She wakes up, washes away a piece of strange flesh, and opens the door to find Jean, who says he lost his family and is now part of hers. He keeps asking her to sleep, and Carol pretends she will, but privately. In Baltimore, Jean finds Carol removing more flesh from her body and becomes suspicious. Tucker escorts Carol and Jean to his mother's place, believing Carol's act. Oliver isn't there, but Carol continues to act around the family. When Ben calls, she talks in code, pretending it's her secretary. When Tucker leaves for work, Carol searches the house and finally finds Oliver in a room. Carol and Oliver reunite with a hug after confirming she's fine. Oliver mentions he's been sleeping but hasn't transformed, and Carol realizes his sleeping disorder medications have made him immune. Jean catches them, but Carol pushes him away and escapes with Oliver. Tucker sees them through a window and chases them. They hide in an abandoned warehouse, but Tucker finds them. As he monologues, Carol tries to sneak away, but Tucker catches her and tries to knock her out. Oliver hits Tucker with a metal tool, so Tucker captures him instead. Carol knocks Tucker out, and they escape to an empty department store. Carol finds an injection and tells Oliver to inject her heart with it if she falls asleep. They search for food, and Ben calls, promising to pick them up soon. Oliver approaches a bloody door, but Carol stops him. Inside, Carol finds people transforming, including a cop. She carefully takes his gun, rushes out, and locks the door, telling Oliver to stay away. Hours pass as they wait for Ben. Carol desperately tries to stay awake but falls asleep. The infected people wake up and hit the door. The noise wakes Oliver, who injects Carol with the syringe, waking her and canceling the transformation. Carol washes the flesh off her face and leaves to find Ben has arrived. She hugs him but realizes he's infected. Ben invites Carol to join the new society without crime, hate, or discrimination. Carol points her gun at him, but Ben opens the door, letting the infected people out. He says they hate immunity and points at Oliver. They try to capture the child, so Carol starts shooting, killing them one by one. Unable to kill Ben, she shoots his leg and runs away with Oliver. Carol and Oliver take Ben's car to escape. While Carol drives frantically, Stephen calls and gives her an address where a helicopter will be waiting. On the main street, surrounded by cars, Carol crashes and loses consciousness. Infected people surround the car, and Oliver locks the doors before shaking Carol awake. A man breaks a window, but Carol speeds up and pushes the people away to escape. Some hang onto the car's roof, so Carol drives erratically, hitting objects to make them fall. Police cars hit Carol's car, making her crash and sending the remaining attackers flying into a shop window. The car is still functional, and Carol continues driving, following Stephen's directions on the phone. An infected man throws a Molotov cocktail at the car, but Carol keeps driving while it's on fire until they reach the parking lot of the designated building. The car crashes into a pillar, and Carol and Oliver run to the elevator, fighting off the infected people until the doors close. They reach the roof, where Stephen and his army friends rescue them in a helicopter. Later, scientists outside the USA create a vaccine, eradicating the alien virus worldwide and allowing life to return to normal. As the lead scientist, Stephen tells the press that vaccinated people will have no memory of the earlier events. Carol has adopted Jean and is now in a relationship with Ben. As the boys leave for school, Ben reads the newspaper and mentions the violent crimes committed by people, leaving Carol pondering the aliens' offer of peace. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.